sauce gang, and welcome back to the channel. Hot Sauce Beats here with a massive reaction for you because we are back with Oversimplified, but today we are finally jumping into his World War II videos, and we're gonna be watching part 1. Now, we've already checked out the World War I videos, we've already watched the Hitler videos, and fam, things are heating up in the world, and it looks like we're about to go to a second world war. Now I'm beyond hyped to see how Oversimplified tells this story, and I know we're gonna learn some new things. But before we get into this video, make sure you show Oversimplified some love by subscribing to their channel. And if you enjoy my reaction, smash that subscribe button because it greatly helps. But enough talking, let's get to reacting and roll that bomb ass intro.
Hot Sauce Beats is finally here. Hot Sauce Beats is finally here. Eat, sleep, make beats. Eat, sleep, make beats.
Hot Sauce Beats. Woo, woo. Oh, let's get on, learn on. Now we're just ahead like a minute. It was just an ad read. So we're here now, chat. We're here.
A young man by the name of Benito Mussolini moves from Italy to Switzerland to avoid military service.
Mussolini.
He gets big into socialism, working for trade unions, writing for socialist newspapers,
Italy, right?
advocating a violent overthrow of European monarchies, the whole shebang. This gets him in a bit of trouble with the Swiss police, so he gets arrested, sent back to Italy, set free, returns to Switzerland, is arrested again, goes back to Italy.
I mean, some people never change. Clearly, some people never change, chat.
Again, completes his military service after previously avoiding it, and then after a brief stint as an elementary school teacher, he finally returns to work as an avid socialist. His speeches and journalistic abilities made him famous among Italian socialists. He was anti-war, so when Italy colonized Libya in 1910, he rioted and got arrested. Then World War I came along, and once again, he protested Italy's involvement. But then he thought, wait a minute, this war could bring about the social...
I didn't know that. That's crazy that... Like, all you ever hear about Mussolini, you would never think that Mussolini didn't like war.
Climate needed
Ever.
to overthrow European monarchies and bring about the socialist revolution everywhere.
I had
and
no
suddenly
clue.
He was pro-war, but his fellow socialists didn't like
Exactly.
his new
He's like, I hate war. Oh, but then I can make people do what I want. Let's go to war.
pro-war stance, so they kicked him out of the party. So then he said, you know what? I'm done with socialism. We need something new, not based on class divisions tearing us apart, but based on unity through nationality. We'll conquer the Mediterranean and reunite all Italian peoples just like the days of the Roman Empire. I'll call it fascismo, and it will guide the Italian nation to greatness. That's all well and good, Mr. Mussolini, but what kind of haircut am I giving you?
And again, I know. So here's the thing, like, right, with communism and other forms of the way that governments are ran, I don't know all the ins and outs and details. I just know, again, I know everything is different during World War II, right? We had a lot of authoritarian leaders, you know, that were running communistic states, but that's not how communism was meant to be ran, right? It's all about just making people equal. And you're not supposed to obviously have an authoritarian leader. Perfect example, you know, Stalin in USSR. So if I offended anyone with my, you know, not knowing the difference between communism and what countries are, like, I thought Italy was communism, but I'm learning something new. I can still learn new stuff, chat. It's okay, and I apologize if anyone was offended by me not knowing the differences, because again, World War II just confuses me because a lot of things were supposed to be one way, but they ran it differently.
Let's go with,
you know,
bold.
Dun, 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 dun. Hey, some people like to be bald. Juice, let's go. Oh, this is gonna be crazy,
on the winner's
chat.
side in World War I, and they hoped they were going to get a lot out of it, but in the end, they only got a little, and they felt cheated. On top of that, a bad economy and weak governments meant that the Italian people were a little unhappy. So when Mussolini came along and said that he could fix everything, his fascist movement gained a lot of support. In 1922, he went to the king and said, make me prime minister, or I'll make me prime minister. And the king said, you and what army?
Make me do it, or I'll do it myself. You do it yourself?
This army.
Wow.
Fair enough. Then he went about establishing a dictatorship with himself at its center. Europe had its first fascist dictator. Next up, Germany. Germany had been on the loser's side, and they got absolutely wrecked.
So, okay, so just to make sure I'm on the same page, so I was clearly wrong about Italy being a communistic state, so they're just fascism? That's a tough word. How do you say that, chat? But they 100% were ran just like Germany, the exact same forms of government, right?
By the Treaty of Versailles. They lost territory had to demilitarize the Rhineland, had to reduce their army to just 100,000 men, couldn't have an air force, had to pay the Allies a huge amount of money that it didn't have, and a new rule was established that every Englishman was held the right to walk into the center of Berlin, pick out any German they wanted, and spank the hell out of them. I made that last one up, but it helps you understand how all this felt to Germans.
I'm noticing OverSimplified likes adding the spankings in there. He did it on the last video too.
Came along
because Hitler got a lot of spankings, and he let us know that.
Said that he could fix everything. The German people loved it. Hitler had been a soldier during World War I, and he was crazy patriotic, and nobody was madder than him about Germany's humiliation. He helped start a new political party, and in 1923 attended a march on Munich with his boys. And then he got arrested. But his popularity grew and grew, and in 1933, the president made him chancellor. He believed he was Germany's great destined savior, and he went
so of course him and Mussolini are become BFFs.
With himself at its center. Europe had fascist dictator number two. Hitler and Mussolini had a lot of the same ideas.
All right, so what do we got in here? Yeah, bro. I mean, extremely racist, quite racist. So yeah, I mean, 100%, right? So socialism, though, I mean, that is fascism, right? There's not a difference between socialism and fascism? Same thing?
But more importantly, they had the same enemies, and they started to get along. Anyone else want to be friends? Franco? No? You good? I do. Who's that? It's Japan, and they've taken over northern China. Let's rewind a bit. Japan had isolated itself from the rest of the world for over 200 years until the Americans showed up and said, you're going to trade with us and you're going to like it. Then the Western powers imposed a bunch of treaties, meaning Japan's economy was bust. They also had no natural resources, so they decided to go get some. They went to war with China to gain a sphere of influence over Korea, and they took a bunch of China's stuff. But then the West said, hey, cut that out. And since
you stop it. Play nice. You can't take stuff that's not yours.
Japan couldn't take on the West. They said, okay, I guess we'll just go home. Wait a minute, what are you doing? Taking advantage of a weakened China and setting up spheres of influence. But I was the one who weakened them. We know. And you guys didn't let me have anything. We know. That seems unfair. We don't think so.
Ruh-roh.
Okay, see ya. So Japan thought, screw this, and went to war with Russia, and stunned everyone by actually winning. Then they fully annexed Korea, but they didn't stop there.
I didn't know that.
In World War I, they took Germany's colonies and islands in Asia. And then in an incident that was maybe staged by the Japanese army, a bomb blew up a Japanese train in Manchuria, giving them an excuse to launch an invasion and take over. So here's the situation. Nazi Germany, fascist...
I like that. I like the situation! Oh my God, for Pauly D! Or no, not Pauly D, sorry. Mike, the situation.
Italy and Japan all believe they're racially superior, all feel hostility towards the Allies, and all want to militarize and take over more stuff. And so they did. Let's start with Germany. Hitler hated the Treaty of Versailles, and now he was ready to begin undoing it. In complete violation of the treaty, the first Luftwaffe squadron...
And I know he'll probably go over it, but originally, didn't Russia and Germany ally together, but then Hitler tried stabbing... Stalin in the back, if I remember correctly, and then Russia joined the Allies.
Squadrons were set up, conscription was introduced, and he pimped up his army.
I could be wrong.
The Allies did nothing.
Hey, was that Exhibit?
Then Hitler sent his army back into the demilitarized Rhineland, giving orders to immediately retreat if the Allies showed up. The Allies did nothing. With his military re-strengthened, he could now move on to step 2. He wanted to rapidly increase the Aryan population, and to do so, he needed Lebensraum, or in other words, he would have to take over the world. But for now, a good portion of Europe would do, and he began eyeing up his neighbors. The Allies finally started to get worried, so they implemented a fairly useless diplomatic strategy called appeasement, and it went a little something like this. Hitler would say, I want that thing, and the Allies would say, you can't have that thing. Okay, you can have that thing, but no more.
No more.
I want that thing. And repeat. In 1938, Hitler's army marched into Austria and just took it, with no resistance. Boom, this is Germany now.
Wow.
Next, he demanded to be given the Sudetenland, an area of Czechoslovakia with many ethnic Germans. The Allies held a meeting with Hitler in Munich and said, look, we're going to give you what... Hang on, this meeting is about my territory. Shouldn't I come to the meeting too?
No, we don't need you here.
Anyway, we're going to give you what you want. Really? Yeah. Just like that? Yeah.
But you're going to stay out of here. It's your country, but we don't need you representing yourself.
What's the catch? Just sign this piece of paper promising you won't invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. Okay. Then Chamberlain returned home victorious, waving his signed piece of paper in the air, declaring crisis to be averted and the continuation of world peace. And we built a statue of Chamberlain in his honor, and every day on the 30th of September we celebrate Chamberlain Day. Hitler's invading the rest of Czechoslovakia. What? He's invading the rest of Czechoslovakia.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Crap, but he signed the paper. He can't do that.
You lied to me. What do you expect? I'm Hitler. Not to be outdone, Mussolini also wanted to get in on the action. He thought to himself, isn't there a not yet colonized nation somewhere which is so underdeveloped that the people would be defending themselves against our tanks with literal bows and arrows and wooden spears? Oh, there is? Fantastic. And so he took it. Italy also wanted to control the entrance to the Adriatic Sea, so they occupied Albania. Then, in another incident which was maybe staged by the Japanese, gunfire was exchanged by Japanese and Chinese troops at the Marco Polo Bridge, and the Japanese launched yet another invasion against China. They swept through Beijing and...
It's just crazy, like, again, everything kind of happening all at once, and you got these multiple leaders that are just... Like, I can't even fathom being here during this time and just hearing, you know, Germany did this today. The next day, yep, Italy did this today. The next day, Japan did this today. You're like, bro, like, we're going back to world. We're going to have another world war. It's inevitable.
Shanghai, and then advanced through the Yangtze Valley to China's then capital, Nanking. It was here that saw the worst of Japan's shocking atrocities committed against the Chinese people. Back in Europe, Germany and Italy made their relationship status official by signing the Pact of Steel. Then, Hitler turned his eyes towards Poland and the hated Polish corridor, splitting Germany in two.
Poland,
at this point, the Allies really had to put their foot down, and they warned him that an invasion of Poland would mean war. Hitler had planned to continue his advance eastward, but he didn't want to end up fighting a war on two fronts. So for now, he made an alliance with Stalin, saying, how about we both invade Poland and split it between the two of us, and I definitely won't not refrain from not betraying you some
I knew I remembered this.
time in the future. Sounds good. This new alliance stunned the West. On the 1st of September 1939, German troops entered Poland, and Britain and France declared war on Germany.
Here we go, it's heating
The
up.
Poles fought hard, but they were no match for the two giants crashing down on them from either side. Then came a period known as the Phony War, where everyone just sort of sat around not doing much. The French had launched a small invasion into the Saarland, but they maintained mostly defensive positions, and after a while decided to just turn around and call it a day. Speaking of France, the French were still super proud of their victory in World War I, and they hadn't really moved on from it. They still used horses, they dispatched messages by motorbike instead of using radio, orders from the commander-in-chief were usually pretty vague, and the troops were rarely inspected.
You guys should do something, I don't know, practice. Practice makes perfect, right? Go ahead, do something. Move around.
They built a line of defenses along their German border, but didn't bother extending it all the way to the Channel, and they wouldn't launch artillery strikes against Germany out of fear of being retaliated against. In a war, they didn't want to attack the enemy. And at first the UK wasn't much better. Chamberlain still naively hoped that the war could be ended diplomatically. Instead of bombing raids, the RAF dropped propaganda leaflets over German cities, which one air marshal said likely did nothing but provide the continent with toilet paper for the duration of the war. They also only sent 200,000 men to France, while the French had mobilized millions.
Here's endless
Both
toilet
Britain and
paper.
France wanted to avoid a
Take
repeat of
that.
the First World War, and so they wanted to keep the war as far from home as possible. So they turned their eyes north, towards Norway. Neutral Sweden was exporting iron ore to Germany through neutral
Good old
Norway, so the
neutral
Allies asked them
Sweden.
if they could please stop exporting iron ore to Germany, but this request was refused. Then, the Soviet Union attacked Finland, so the Allies said, how about we land troops in Norway and move them across Sweden to go help out your good pal Finland, and along the way maybe take control of all your airfields. But Norway and Sweden still said no, so the UK mined the waters around Norway to force any transport ships into international waters, and
Oh, sheesh! The mines! So many mines in World War II.
they also attacked a German tanker they found in the area. Hitler realized what the Allies were up to, and he quickly moved to secure his supply of iron ore. He launched an invasion through Denmark into Norway. The Allies rushed to land troops at key ports along the coast, but Germany had taken control of Norway's airfield, and their air superiority decided the fight. The Allies had to retreat. After this slightly embarrassing failure, Chamberlain resigned and was replaced with Winston Churchill, who had a slightly different approach to
Let's
dealing with
go,
the Germans.
Winston
Hitler's
Churchill!
overall strategy was similar to Germany's First World War strategy. Attack France, defeat France, knocking out the UK in the process, then turn on the Soviet Union and win the war. During the Phony War, the Allies had given Hitler time to prepare his forces. Now,
Yeah, dude. I know that was a big thing. There was a time where they could have like inflicted some damage on Germany, but nobody did anything, and all they did was let Hitler regroup, and just load up that front right there.
he was ready to attack. The Allies had wanted to place troops in Belgium, but Belgium had refused, and in a move that surprised pretty much no one, Hitler launched an invasion to get around France's defenses. The Allies charged into Belgium at full speed to meet the German invasion head-on, and it looked like a repeat of the First World War was coming. But this time, Hitler had a trick up his sleeve. Blitzkrieg. As the Germans advanced, they sent thousands of refugees westward, slowing down the Allies. Then, to the south, the French had left the Ardennes, an area full of hills and forests, pretty underdefended because they thought it was naturally impenetrable. Well, the Germans were about to penetrate it with everything they had. They smashed 50 Wehrmacht divisions through and encircled the Allied armies at lightning speed. The best of the Allied forces were now trapped. The Germans squeezed in from all sides, taking out France's best armies.
And that's right, the Blitzkrieg thing, that's a strategy that Hitler himself came up with.
And nearly wiping out the British too, but they managed to make a desperate last-minute escape at Dunkirk, with British civilian ships even making the perilous journey to bring their young men home.
So a little more context on that. So this is a moment that Hitler, they're saying, could have won the war, right? Because, and I know USA isn't in this yet, but could have at least taken out a massive, I think there was something like, there was over 100,000 British troops here, and Hitler like semi looked up to the British, thinking like they were kind of equivalent to the Aryans. So he hesitated for like 24 hours to kill all of them. And that's when like the biggest rescue, you know, people in fishing boats or whatever came across the strait and rescued everybody there. But Hitler, had he just instantly attacked, could have killed them all. And then that allowed the UK to regroup. And
with most of the French forces depleted, the Germans breezed through, taking Paris, and France fell. What the Germans couldn't do in World War I, Hitler had done just like that. Hitler hoped that with the fall of France, the UK would also lose hope and sue for peace. But quite annoyingly, it didn't, and he needed to secure the Western Front, so he tried to force them into submission with mind games. The UK were now all alone, and Hitler wanted to emphasize that. First of all, just before France fell, Italy finally declared war on the Allies, making the UK's situation even worse. Next, instead of just occupying all of France, Hitler occupied the coastal areas for defense, but allowed France to continue its existence as a German puppet state. This way, it looked like the UK's old ally had decided to switch sides. Hitler also hoped that the UK wouldn't attack any of her old allies' navy bases or colonies in Africa, giving Hitler an extra line of defense to the south. But the UK made sure to respond.
I didn't realize Hitler took over so much of Africa. I didn't know any of that.
To this by sailing down to France's navy base in Algeria and wrecking a bunch of ships. So have at it. Hitler then began laying down plans for an invasion of Great Britain. Before German troops could land on British soil, he would first need air and naval superiority across the Channel. Waves of German bombers came, while the completely outnumbered RAF worked bravely around the clock in an attempt to quell the German attacks. At first, the Luftwaffe targeted British ports and coastal facilities. Then it attacked RAF bases, crippling the RAF's ability to defend the nation. And it looked like Hitler's Great British Invasion was coming.
Hold on, I think it's right when the U.S. comes in.
But then, Churchill ordered a small, pretty insignificant bombing raid over Berlin. It didn't do much damage, but Hitler was furious, and he immediately ordered the Luftwaffe to refocus its attacks on civilian targets in London. Children were sent off to the countryside, away from their parents to avoid danger, and frequent trips to air raid shelters became a daily occurrence. But British morale held firm. Smiling, knitting, lounging casually, these people have balls of steel. This refocusing on London also gave the RAF breathing space to reorganize, so Hitler kind of shot himself in the foot there.
Just the dart gun!
Finally, the Luftwaffe sent one massive all-out attack on London, and the RAF successfully repelled it, destroying many of the German aircraft and placing air superiority firmly in British hands. Hitler's invasion had to be postponed, but the bombing of British cities continued for some time.
Oh my God, chat! This was so good! Dude, let me bring you in. Oversimplified, just again, the way that they are able to tell this story. I mean, whether you're a kid, an adult, man, woman, you know, whatever country you're from, it's enjoyable to learn from Oversimplified. Adds little humor here and there that makes it funny, but also gives it the respect that it's due. Because again, this is a very heavy topic. Millions and millions of people died. And I love the little nuggets of info that maybe aren't taught at school. There's so much little things here and there that I learned reacting to this that I did not know before. And again, that is because of Oversimplified. I'm beyond hyped for part 2. Again, that's where things ramp up. The US joins. And yeah, again, it's been forever since I've learned any of this. So I don't remember much of it. But yeah, and I definitely got a better understanding, you know, of the differences between communism and fascism, and socialism, and just all the different isms. So again, I did not mean to offend anyone if I did during my last reaction. Again, I was just confused in regards to the differences between how Stalin ran Russia and how Hitler ran Germany. Because one is communism, one is fascism, but the communism was ran with an authoritarian leader. So they were ran the exact same. So that's what I was kind of confused about. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was amazing. I'm beyond hyped to get into part 2 next week. Make sure you show OverSimplified some love by subscribing to their channel. And if you enjoyed my reaction, please help support the channel by smashing that subscribe and like button. It's absolutely free and it greatly helps out the channel. Enjoy the rest of your day. And remember, it's eat, sleep, and make beats. And as usual, be kind to one another. That's all I got. Boom, I'm out. Got the button love for the Sauce Gang. Peace out, Sauce Gang.